interesting and exciting thing about EdCrunch is that there are people from all over the world who really care about the role of learning in building a better future. And there's this intense sense of exploration. What works? How can we make this better? Can we reinvent this most important part of the human experience? The ability of people to learn is how society progresses. And if we can figure out what's best and teach each other about our discoveries, we can actually make the world better in a profound way. And I think that the mission of EdCrunch is very important, and the passion that I see in the people who are here to learn from each other and to take what they learn back to their country and improve the lives of the people that they're trying to serve. I think that one of the most important things about in-person conferences are the people you meet. It's not the content, it's the context, where you have opportunities to socialize, to converse about what you've just heard, and you make new friends. I've certainly met people here who I would never have met. Sitting at dinner last night with an entrepreneur from Kazakhstan, that's exciting to me. And I'd never get that through just an online appearance. First off, let me be clear. I didn't initiate the idea of free software. I didn't even come up with the name. What I did was explain it. In some sense, I'm a teacher. And what I did was I explained what it meant and why it was important in a different way than people had done before, so that it was understandable to a broader group of people. And right now, I think I'm struggling with something, trying to express it, and trying to get people to understand it. And that is the lessons that we can take from artificial intelligence and algorithmic systems, whether it's something like Google or Facebook or Twitter or Yandex Taxi, Uber. These are new kinds of cybernetic systems, I use an old word, that combine humans and machines into this vast new synthesis. I call it hybrid artificial intelligence, to distinguish between these sort of complex systems of humans and machines versus simply trying to create an independently intelligent software agent, for example. And these hybrid software machines have some characteristics that we can understand. And one of them is that they're optimizing machines. We tell them what we want them to do, what we want them to optimize for. So a search engine tries to optimize for relevance. That is, what is it that you're really looking to, what information you're looking to find. Social media tends to optimize for engagement. What's the content that you'll spend more time with? And what's interesting in contrasting those two optimization functions, you can see, particularly with social media, that there were unexpected effects. When Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, he thought that showing people more of what they liked would bring people closer together. We discovered actually that it tended to create more divisiveness, and people, tribalism, and could be manipulated in various ways. And now all the social media companies are struggling with how to bring that back under control. And I look at our world and I say, well, that pattern of the wish that we give to the optimization function that we give to our machines is a lot like the stories from Arabian mythology, where you have a genie and you get to give it 3 wishes. And we all know how those stories end, right? You didn't express quite the right wish. You didn't think about the consequences. And so I'm trying to get people to think about the challenges of artificial intelligence not as some far future thing that we have to worry about when AI becomes intelligent, like in the science fiction movies, but instead as a characteristic that we're wrestling with today of our designed hybrid intelligence systems. And then to get beyond understanding that it's not just the obvious tech systems, because I believe that our economic system is also one of these human designed systems that's increasingly taken over by algorithms. You think about financial markets with program trading. But more than that, and I'm wrestling with this particularly in America, because we have told our financial system to tell its companies, it's as if it's the master AI, it says you must optimize for profit for companies, and you should treat human beings as a cost to be eliminated. And this is having all kinds of untoward economic effects, where society was becoming more prosperous for a long time, and now suddenly it's becoming less prosperous. And I don't think that that's an accident. I think it's what we have asked our financial system to optimize for. And so the thing I'm trying to champion right now, and it's the subject of the book I wrote called WTF, What's the Future and Why It's Up to Us, it's how do we turn these machines into engines of prosperity again, as opposed to engines of extraction of value for a very small and limited elite. Well, I think, of course, it's about ethics, and the values that we put into our machines. But many times when people are thinking about AI and ethics, they're thinking in the small about a particular problem. Is there bias in this algorithm? Is there, did we feed it bad data? Are we going to use AI for weapons? Or these are small issues, and I'm trying to pull back and look at this much bigger issue, which is our entire world is increasingly enmeshed in this electronic system, and we're not even aware of what we are asking it to do. And so the fundamental ethical imperative is to make sure that our society and our markets as a whole are infused with a sense of the ethical imperative of what we're trying to build. I would say that there's a short-term answer, and that short-term answer everybody is all over, which is, oh, you need to learn programming, you need to learn IT skills, you need to become familiar with computers. And I think that yes, that is a fundamental literacy. But when I look at the scope of technology, what happens is you have a curve and it tends to flatten out. And then you have a new curve that takes off. And I think the industries of the future are going to be in food and in energy, because climate change is a pretty serious challenge for us as a society. And I think that we're going to have to use that computing power and those computing skills, but we're going to be looking at a different field of endeavor. So I would say study genetics, study biotech, study energy technologies of various kinds, because in the long run, that's where we need the most innovation. And we're going to, and that obviously overlaps with what we think of as computer science. Tesla is a very good example of a company that bridges all of these areas. Elon Musk is investing in electric cars, in self-driving cars, in space. You look at Jeff Bezos, he's made investments in artificial, meat from plant-based proteins. He's also investing in space. I think that sort of the future of food is going to be really interesting, the future of water, the future of making our systems more efficient. There's a wonderful quotation from a man named Edwin Schlossberg. He said, "The skill of writing is to create a context in which other people can think." And that is also the skill of teaching. What a teacher can provide is this broad landscape in which the individual can pursue their own projects, their own ideas, their own interests, because they understand the landscape. They've been a context that has excited them, that has given them directions to explore. And there are very simple ways to understand that. I'm here, first-time visitor to Moscow, and I get a context. I look at the map. I say, well, what are the things I already know about? What should I know about? I do some research and I read, and that context informs what things I choose to do. Now, right now, I've been getting some tips from people here at TechCrunch, but I've also read online, and then I say, oh, I want to go see this, I want to go see that. And then I get there, and each exploration takes me further, and I say, oh, I saw this thing that I didn't expect, I want more of that. And that's how we should be living our lives. It's a constant exploration. And the best teachers fill you with that love of exploration. And that could be, if you're a literary person, you find authors that you love, or a period that you love, or I'm certainly a literary person as well, and so I read, one of the things I love to read are sort of second-tier books from the past, because they're almost like a time machine that lets you see into a society, authors who are now largely forgotten. And it's a fascinating way, because I learn not just, I enjoy the novel, for example, but I've been reading Anthony Trollope, the British novelist, and he's talking about a period of intense struggle in the 1860s in Britain to come to terms with a new kind of society that's not ruled by class. He's this proto-feminism in these books from the 1860s. And go, who knew, that they were struggling with these issues 150 years ago? And that's just one example. So literature can be a window into history. History can be a window into literature. In the practical sciences, there's so many scientists, for example, who are saying, wow, I have to learn to code because it's how I advance in my field. And it's, for me, the most important thing after that context that a teacher can provide is that they fill the student with a self-directed interest in something, that they want to go deeper, because that will be this siren song that calls you onward to a lifetime of learning. Well, first off, I think when you come to a place like Moscow, it's the center of a very different geography. There are, I think there are places in the world that have been names on a map, and suddenly there are real people associated with them, and that geographic expansion is one part of it. So I may end up, going and giving a talk in Kazakhstan as a result of having come here and met people from Kazakhstan. In terms of ideas, I'm finding some very interesting work from University 2035, where they're looking at, interesting ways of connecting, neurology and psychology to education. They're looking at how do you build models of curriculum in a population and what outcomes. There's a lot of really interesting research that they're trying to apply, and I think that's quite interesting. And in general, I think I'm coming away with, oh, this is a really interesting place to do business, and we should spend more time here. Well, the thing I've probably been spending the most time in the last few years is economics, which is not a field I'd ever studied. But it does seem to me that if you look at the big, most successful technology companies today, they're actually marketplaces. And they're laboratories in a certain sense, and they're algorithmically managed marketplaces. So they're laboratories for economics. And it's not an accident that a company like Google or Amazon has a chief economist. And these economists are looking to manage these quite large economies. and they're often using very different tools to manage them. And there's a wonderful phrase that I encountered through the work of a man named Alvin Roth, who's kind of pioneered the field of market design in economics. He won the Nobel Prize for the redesign of kidney transplant marketplaces. And he called his book Who Gets What and Why. And that is actually the fundamental question of market design. And that idea that markets are a design thing, as opposed to the narrative that sort of the market is just what it is and it's the free market, it just acts on its own, is for me a very bad map that directs us wrong. We have to understand that it's a design thing. And so I've just been really looking at the parallels between the marketplaces of Facebook and Amazon and Google and companies like that, or Alibaba or Yandex, and then the broader marketplace that we have in society, and what can we take from technology and learn and apply to the design of our economic systems in the wider world. I lead up to it in my first book, and many of the ideas are implicit there, but it really is something that I think will become a second book. I'm not quite sure what I'm calling it. I've thought about calling it The Illusion of Free Markets, but it turns out somebody else has already used that title for a somewhat different book. But it really is this, trying to explore this idea of what we learn from tech platforms that we can apply in the broader economy. And I have written a couple of articles on the subject that have appeared in courts about Google and Amazon and sort of how do we think about them as monopolies. Yeah, I would say anytime you can get out of your usual environment and meet new people and new ideas is time well spent. So if you want to get better as a teacher, you could do far worse than spend a week coming to Moscow for TechCrunch.